British Navy fired nearly 3,000 shells at the German battleship Bismarck, and it still wouldn't sink. Right now, 3 miles below the surface of the North Atlantic, that same ship is still sitting on the ocean floor, upright, with its guns still in place. Nobody has gone back for it. Nobody is even allowed near it. And some of the details I found when I started looking into this, I had to check 3 times because I couldn't believe them. Why is the Bismarck still there after 80 years? That's exactly what we're going to get into. To understand why the wreck is still there, you first have to understand what the Bismarck actually was, because this wasn't a normal ship. When she entered service in August 1940, she was the most powerful battleship Germany had ever put in the water, and one of the largest warships any European nation had ever built. She ran 823 feet from bow to stern, carried over 50,000 tons when fully loaded, and held 8 15-inch guns across 4 turrets. Around 2,200 men lived and worked aboard her. Nazi Germany called her unsinkable, and while that was partly propaganda, the armor beneath her deck was built to absorb punishment that would tear any other ship apart. All of that, and her entire active career lasted just 8 days. In May 1941, the Bismarck left the Baltic on her first and only combat mission, Operation Rheinübung, sailing alongside the heavy cruiser Prinz Eugen. The goal was to break into the Atlantic, hunt down Allied convoys, and cut the supply line running between the United States and the United Kingdom. On May 24, 1941, she met 2 British warships in the Denmark Strait, HMS Hood and HMS Prince of Wales. Early in the fight, a single shell from the Bismarck punched through Hood's deck and reached the ammunition magazine below. The explosion tore the ship in 2, and she was gone in under 3 minutes. Out of 1,418 men, only 3 survived. That was not just a battlefield victory. In one moment, the Bismarck went from being a raider on a mission to being the most hunted ship in the entire Atlantic. Britain's response was immediate. Sink the Bismarck at whatever cost it takes. The Royal Navy mobilized on a scale that was almost hard to believe. But the battle had also wounded the Bismarck. A fuel tank had been hit. Roughly 1,000 tons of oil were bleeding into the sea behind her, and that damage forced her to abandon the mission. Instead of pushing deeper into the Atlantic, she turned toward the French port of Brest for repairs. For about a day and a half, the British lost her completely. The Bismarck moved through the darkness while search parties looked in the wrong direction. Then her commander, Admiral Gunther Lütjens, made the decision that sealed her fate. On May 25th, he broke radio silence and sent a long transmission back to Germany. British signals intelligence picked it up, fixed her position, and the chase found new life. The following evening, on May 26th, aircraft launched from HMS Ark Royal, coming in with torpedoes. Most of them missed, but one hit landed in exactly the wrong place. It caught the stern and jammed the rudders hard to port. From that moment forward, the Bismarck couldn't steer. She began turning in slow circles in the open Atlantic while her crew worked through the night trying to free the rudders by hand. Morning arrived before they could. What happened at dawn on May 27, 1941 was not really a battle anymore. It was closer to an execution. HMS King George V and HMS Rodney were waiting for her, along with 2 heavy cruisers, and they opened fire without stopping. More than 2,800 shells were directed at the Bismarck, and over 400 of them connected. Her guns went silent one by one. Her superstructure was torn open, and the casualties among her crew were catastrophic. And yet, the ship still wouldn't go under. This is the part that got me. After nearly 2 hours of sustained, close-range bombardment, with everything above the waterline destroyed, the British still couldn't sink her. That armored hull kept the Bismarck afloat through all of it. The sea itself was struggling to take her down. With the ship completely crippled and hundreds of men still trapped below deck, the order came to scuttle. The crew opened the sea valves, set the explosive charges, and at 10:39 that morning, the Bismarck finally went under, sliding stern first into the Atlantic with her flag still flying. Of the roughly 2,200 men aboard, only 114 were pulled from the water. Around 2,100 went down with the ship, and most people have never even heard this story. If you want to make sure you don't miss the ones coming next, hit subscribe. Now, back to the Bismarck. Here's what matters about those final moments. The Bismarck was not simply sinking from battle damage. She was already flooding from the inside before she began her descent. The sea valves were open, water was rushing through the hull, and the compartments were filling as she went down. That detail is the key to everything that came next. The wreck sat undisturbed on the ocean floor for 48 years, and nobody knew what condition it was in or even exactly where it was. Then, in 1989, Robert Ballard, the same man who had found the Titanic 4 years earlier, went looking. What he found stopped everyone cold. The ship was upright. After a 2-hour bombardment, torpedo strikes, and a 15,700-foot drop to the bottom of the Atlantic, the hull was not crushed, not scattered, not collapsed. It was still clearly the Bismarck, sitting on the seabed as if it had just gone under. But because the sea valves had already been opened during the scuttling, the compartments were filling with water the entire way down. By the time she reached the bottom, there was no trapped air left to compress, and so the implosion never happened. The way she died actually protected what she left behind. And then there's what Ballard actually found when he got down there. At that depth, the water is near freezing, the darkness is total, and the organisms that eat through shallow water wrecks within decades simply can't survive down there. Everything that normally destroys a shipwreck over time just doesn't exist at 15,700 feet. The Bismarck didn't just survive the battle, she survived the ocean itself. But here's where the story takes an entirely different turn. Even if someone wanted to go down and raise her, they couldn't. No technology exists today that could lift a 50,000-ton warship from nearly 3 miles down. The few submersibles that can even reach that depth are built purely for observation. They can look, but they can't touch. And no salvage operation on Earth comes close to what recovering a ship like that would actually require. And even if that technology existed tomorrow, it still wouldn't matter, because Germany won't allow it. Under international law, the wreck belongs to Germany, and it has been formally declared a war grave. Around 2,100 men are still inside that hull right now. The German government doesn't permit entry into the wreck, doesn't permit the removal of any artifacts, and has never once shifted from that position. The Bismarck is not just unreachable, she's completely untouchable, and the law intends to keep her that way permanently. Robert Ballard understood the weight of that from the moment he found her. After locating the wreck in 1989, he made a personal decision to keep the exact coordinates to himself, specifically because he didn't want people going down there and stripping pieces from a site where so many men lost their lives. He compared it directly to grave robbing, and he meant it. In 2001, a separate expedition brought paying visitors down to the site in deep-sea submersibles, which created significant controversy at the time. Though nothing was taken from the wreck, and the site remained undisturbed. She's still down there right now, upright, intact, guns in place, resting exactly where she went under on May 27, 1941. If you'd like to see more of these in-depth ship lookups, don't forget to subscribe.